Hi, I'm Michael Smart, and this is the School of Public Policy. Today I released a paper on the GST and HST system in Canada. The key findings were as follows. We now have a much bigger value-added tax system in Canada than we did back in 1991 when the system started, simply because a lot of provinces have now adopted the federal base in designing their system. The result of that is that overall we do have a better tax system than before, but the problems, the existing problems in the GST base are more important than they used to be because they're now getting copied by a bunch of provinces. So my paper is a set of estimates of just how big those problems are for the Canadian economy and comparisons to what's happening elsewhere in the world. And finally, a set of recommendations for what we ought to do instead. Overall, economists like to measure the special tax preferences and special deals within the system with the concept known as tax expenditures, just comparing the revenues that get generated by our system to what we would have if we applied the same tax rate to the entire tax base, which in this case is all of the consumption in Canada. And those numbers are pretty big for the GST-HST system. At the federal level, the overall tax expenditure from the special deals within our system is about $17 billion. The provincial level and the 6 provinces that also have value-added taxes, that's another $22 billion in tax expenditures. So overall, we're looking at $39 billion in potential revenues that are lost due to tax preferences, about 50% of the amount that actually is collected. What I mean by tax preferences is that there are certain economic activities and certain kinds of consumption in the economy which either don't pay any tax at all, they're so-called zero-rated under the GST and HST, or they're exempt in the system, which means that consumers don't pay any tax, but businesses do pay some tax behind the scenes. Overall, those special provisions add up to the $39 billion I mentioned. The most important of those, in my view, are the tax preferences for food and agricultural products and also medical devices and prescription drugs. Now, there's a view that there's something special about those things and it wouldn't be appropriate for governments to tax it. My view and the view of most economists is that that's simply wrong. We would have a more efficient, a simpler, and even, yes, a more equitable tax system if we applied the standard tax rates, the 5% federal and the 7 to 10% provincial tax rates, apply it to everything, including food products, and then make other changes in the system to make sure that no one is unduly harmed by that simpler and better tax system. In the ideal reform, in the economist's dream of where we would go, our system would resemble the New Zealand value-added tax system, where virtually everything that people buy is taxed at a standard rate. The result of that, as I said, would be something like $40 billion more in potential revenues to government. Now, there's a lot of things that government could do with those potential revenues. And clearly, the first thing that would have to be considered, and which I would recommend, is some enhancement to the low-income tax credits that we already have in our system to make sure that those extra tax burdens were not unduly hard on low-income families in Canada. The next thing that I would recommend and that I would think the governments would choose to look at is an overall rate reduction in the system. For example, with that 50% extra potential tax revenues, we can imagine the existing rate in a province like Ontario of 13% being cut as low as 8.5% overall. Now, I wouldn't recommend such a big cut in the overall rate. I think the revenue should be put to different purposes. But again, these kind of rate cuts to soften the impact on consumers are certainly part of the possibility. I'm Michael Smart, and this is the School of Public Policy. Thanks for watching.